Greetings, shippers. So who's watching Riverdale? The dark Archie reboot that nobody really asked for, but many are secretly and not so secretly enjoying. Well, this show has reignited not only an interest in Archie, but also in shipping for these characters. The pairings have exploded, and with it, people have their OTPs and their no-TPs. So let's get ready to go through some, and let's get started with Bughead, the pairing of Betty Cooper and Jughead Jones, aka Forsyth Pendleton Jones III. Alright, there's a lot going on with this ship, so strap in, because it's going to be a long one. It's time to go deep. Archie and the gang have been in near continuous publication since 1941. If you want more about their history, check out a previous video on Archie and standing the test of time. However, for our purposes, let's isolate Betty and Jughead. Jughead was introduced as Archie's loyal best friend, obsessed with food and uninterested in romantic entanglements, in fact, actively avoiding them for the most part. He served as a level-headed contrast who could let Archie know when he was being ridiculous or unintentionally cruel. He's family-oriented, with a great love for his little sister and dog, and generally had a cheerful, level-headed personality, despite being an outsider in terms of interests and a bit of a cynic in terms of temperament. Jughead just always seemed confident and sure of himself as he was, and wasn't trying to prove himself to anyone, except for that weird punk comic in the 80s, and some other weird side forays that Archie was prone to taking. Archie and the gang have been through some interesting crossovers. Jughead isn't shy either when it comes to sharing his opinions on his friends and acquaintances, or calling them out for their flaws. And aside from Archie, there was always one person he seemed to have a special soft spot for, and that was Betty Cooper. Betty Cooper was created to be one of Archie's romantic interests, a typical girl next door who evolved into a much more multifaceted character as the years progressed, with more and more traits being added to her. She has many talents, ranging from baking and sewing to being able to fix a car. She's a good student, smart enough to offer tutoring, and enjoys traditionally feminine activities along with more traditionally masculine ones. She was a good friend to Archie as well as a love interest, and was always very accepting of Jughead, and he even put up with her bursts of physical affection. The two would occasionally team up against Veronica or Reggie and would have their own side adventures, and for longtime readers there was a slight undercurrent that the two could have something together. The two worked well together, and Jughead was always positive and kind to Betty. And while a romantic interest on their parts was sometimes played for comedy, there were also genuine moments, such as Jughead's admission that despite his lack of interest in the woman of Riverdale, if he had to pick one, it would be Betty. In short, there was a large group of people who were intrigued by the concept of what is now known as Bughead, just as there were those who always felt that Jughead's behavior largely hinted at asexuality, and of course people who believed both simultaneously, either as coinciding occurrences or as options they would like to see more of, even if it was separately. In fact, fans often wrote to the comic back in its heyday saying that they would love to see Betty and Jughead together, and some writers considered it, but felt it would end the more traditional and lucrative love triangle between Archie, Betty, and Veronica. Flash forward to the gritty, modern, at times clever and subversive, and at times oh so stereotypical and very CW, Riverdale. This update takes a slightly different view of the characters, while attempting to maintain their cores. Well, for some characters at least. Not Chuck though, RIP nerd Chuck, now you're a jerk, cause reasons. And honestly, that whole episode and scene, so many issues. But we're not here for awkwardly incorporated social messages. We're here to take a look at the evolution of this pairing. So let's dive into the updated version of Betty and Jughead. Betty in Riverdale is more tightly wound than her comic counterpart, but she comes by it honestly, with overbearing parents who have forced her into a role that has rendered her both a perfectionist and overachiever. She is still the girl next door in that she's approachable, kind, and down to help her friends no matter what. She's just more stressed out about it, and a lot more vocal about when she feels she's being taken advantage of. She matches her 2015 reboot comic counterpart pretty well, but is still tweaked as a result of the show's more neo-noir setting. However, it's safe to say Riverdale has very much attempted to move past the dichotomy of good girl, poor girl, etc. Though how well they do with that is up for debate. As for Jughead, he's not as different as it first seems. Despite the disconcerting lack of eating, I demand 1 burger per episode at least. Jughead here is a jaded cynic with a blog, working on a deep crime novel. The cynicism and aloofness are pretty classic, but the shoulder chip is new, though the show does justify it by giving him a pretty rough home situation. His status as an outsider is definitely more played up, but it's largely lip service until the plot needs it to matter. You'll hear tales about how on the outside he is, but he's still seen hanging around with the gang, although that may be meant to symbolize him coming back into the fold. Lots of this tough guy persona is a facade though, and it's clear he has a softer side, quickly forgiving Archie and looking out for his friends, particularly Betty. Betty and Jughead have a very natural arc in the show that actually isn't very forced, though I'm sure those dedicated to the no TP side would disagree. The characters come together organically over mutual interests, both interested in writing, finding the truth, and the murder of Jason Blossom, though admittedly for different reasons. Both are isolated in their home lives, which drives them to spend more time together, working on this passion project / diversion, and they have no prior romantic leanings, so are getting to know each other again, after what appears to be a period of time of not spending much time together. The urgency of the events and the charged air around them definitely accelerates the onset of their romance, but even so, it's handled tentatively, like a discovery that neither one is certain of yet. All they know is that they like each other as people, they enjoy spending time together, and they find comfort and strength in each other. The two also partake in lots of witty banter together, use pet names liberally, and are very quick to make the other smile, which is something that not all of the characters can do. In short, they clearly have a connection. Neither is professing their undying love or making marriage plans. It's a relationship that is new and just happening, and it has yet to be seen if it will be good for either of them in canon at the time of this recording, or if it even precludes or shuts down the conversation some fear that it does surrounding a main opposition for this pairing, which we'll get to in a bit. For some fans, this was a welcome pairing, because if there's one thing this show definitely got right, it's Archie's inability to decide who he likes or to not hurt the feelings of both his friends and love interests in the process. Many liked the more natural evolution of Bughead and feel the characters as well as their actors have great chemistry. From a narrative standpoint, there have been plenty of fanfiction opportunities due to the show's dramatic nature. So there are many tales of Betty taking Jughead in, and the two confiding in each other, getting to know more and more about one another. And of course, sleuthing. Lots and lots of sleuthing. Based on the characters, a lot of the fics are surrounding emotional growth and getting to know each other, highlighting a desire by fans to see these two grow together. There are numerous well-constructed fan vids and mixes as well, so if you're new and looking to get into some stuff, there's plenty out there, and at the time of this recording, it's early still, so it has yet to get really daunting. Let me know if you want any recs for this pairing down below. I found so many while I was researching them. There's a lot of really cool stuff out there. Also, after how serious this video gets, it might be fun to, well, have some fun. So those were some reasons for. Now for the against. In order to get into that, we're going to have to dive deep into a couple of complex topics, so that's going to make the con side seem longer. It's not because there are more cons, but simply because these topics require a bit more explanation than usual, largely because of the fact that there are multiple sides and they are rarely discussed at all. For many excited about Riverdale, they were hoping to see a depiction of an asexual Jughead. This included the current Jughead actor Cole Sprouse, though he was also quick to point out ultimately a character's depiction is the responsibility of the writers and the showrunners, not the actors. Probably because people are now mistakenly blaming him for what they believe as the show's mistake. So as briefly mentioned earlier, the rumors about Jughead being asexual have been around for decades. He never had a real romantic interest, the Ethel-Jughead romance being entirely one-sided, unless it was played for comedy. And the whole thing was played for comedy. He was more interested in food and was a self-professed woman hater. Although back in the early days of comics, this was meant as a comedic character trait rather than some bold forward admission. Woman haters were an actual character trait, because women are nothing but trouble, am I right? Also, some stories took the time to explore that this wasn't a true statement, as he was actually very good friends with Betty. In one story, Food Phobia, Dilton and Archie find out Jughead is actually really nervous around girls, which is why he avoids them, and any potential romance, and it's also the reason he eats. Though, when he finds this out, he's so put off food, he loses his appetite. Budum-tsh. Regardless, for many, from a headcanon perspective, all of this came across as asexuality, and it was a headcanon many maintained. During the reboot of Archie and part of the new Riverdale offshoot in 2015, the author Chip Zdarsky decided to make this sexuality canon in his universe. Jughead makes a brief declaration of his asexuality, and then, well, not much comes of it. At least not at the time of this recording, which was an approach some people really liked, but others wished had been more fleshed out. But for fans of this headcanon, this confirmed their views and canonized a long-held belief, and so they were hopeful they would see such representation on the show itself. So there was some disappointment and backlash when Bughead made an appearance. To discuss this, one must look at two avenues. Firstly, let's take a look at canon. Canon, especially comic canon, can be a difficult realm to navigate. With comics, there are many versions and near constant updates. Things are constantly being rendered canon or uncanon based upon relaunches, new authors, and a whole bunch of other situations. However, even with that being the case, there are certain moments that stick out more than others, even if they are tiny or never ever readdressed, or even if they are retconned. But what determines these moments? As discussed, both Bughead and asexual Jughead have long histories, so why is there more outrage if one becomes canon than the other? Well, for some, it comes down to representation. Asexuality simply isn't something that is depicted or even acknowledged very often. Some people still feel it's not even a real thing. Hence, some people view the Bughead decision as yet another in the long history of ignoring asexuality in favor of normalizing other sexualities. Others go so far as to attack those who ship Bughead and claim that they are bigoted and pushing a heteronormative narrative. However, it must again be noted that Bughead has had a long history, and there are many who felt just as ardently that this was a side of the characters they wanted to see explored, as they felt more of a connection with it. And as will be discussed shortly, some feel there is no reason for the two to be mutually exclusive. When it comes to confirming canon/respecting it, people have different philosophies. Some feel it was a brief moment, and if writers want to explore it, great, and if not, that's fine too. However, others, due to either their subject positioning, loyalty to the recent canon, or white knighting tendencies, view the exclusion as a direct attack on representation, and some are even threatening to boycott. It's important to note when one ships any ship, regardless of what it may be, that one must consider other perspectives, or you run the risk of trampling on others' viewpoints and trivializing their experiences and interpretations. And this can happen in all directions. This is one of the reasons some creators fear confirming fan hypotheses, such as Fabian Nicieza. Forgive my pronunciation. He had this to say about confirming Deadpool's pansexuality. Not trying to be dismissive, but readers always want to make a character their own, and often that is to the exclusion of what the character might mean to other fans. I've been dogged with the DP sexuality question for years. It is a bit tiring. He is no sex and all sexes. He is yours and everyone else's. So not dismissive, but rather the epitome of inclusive. Basically, some fans use canon information as a way to silence other interpretations, regardless of the history or reasoning behind them. And if one's ship happens to fall into a paradigm that could be viewed as heteronormative, it makes the discussion even more difficult, as it is easy to throw out terms such as bigotry and silence the other side through fear. That is not to say that there are no cases where this is what is happening, but to assume that of all is dangerous and takes a lot of fun out of fandom and shipping. Because not all paradigms are as dichotomous or simple as people seem to think. Which brings us to another argument. Jughead could be asexual and still be in a romantic relationship with Betty. As many asexuals themselves have been quick to point out, asexual does not equal aromantic, and vice versa. While many headcanon that Jughead is both ace and aro, even in the canon confirmation, only ace was mentioned. So if one is going off of that canon mention, then Bughead is still not off the table. Asexuality is defined as the lack of sexual attraction to anyone, or low or absent interest in or desire for sexual activity. While aromanticism is defined as a person who experiences little or no romantic attraction to others. Where romantic people have an emotional need to be with another person in a romantic relationship, aromantics are often satisfied with friendships and other non-romantic relationships. There are asexual individuals in loving long-term romantic relationships, and not all of these relationships are devoid of physical affection, i.e. hand-holding, cuddling, even kissing. And even if they do not enjoy such physical activities, that also does not dismiss the idea of having a romantic relationship. The ace spectrum is nuanced and rarely discussed. Asexuality and aromanticism are just the tip of the iceberg, and as with all sexualities, there are varied unique permutations happening therein. For some fans, Betty and Jughead in no way closes the door on having a discussion about asexuality, be it a canon or a fandom one. Some also note with amusement the large amount of people outside their community getting irate on their behalf, as often arises in situations like this. While others sadly say they are used to being ignored, and will simply adjust this ship in their headcanons and fiction to explore the possibilities that are most likely not going to occur on screen. As all ongoing shows are growing and changing, it's hard to say at the outset exactly where they're going. Even if, yeah, it's the CW, so we probably all have a good idea. So basically, while the disappointment from some fans is understandable, and there is always a need for more nuanced and expansive representation, if it does not happen, it's most likely not some malicious, spite-filled decision to push an agenda, but rather an exploration of an alternate direction with its own take, or even more likely just what focus tested the best. Which brings us to our next point. Some feel that no one should be looking to entertainment media for representation, or at least not for proper, accurate representation, especially not from a medium that is profit-based and must draw in as many viewers with either the tried and true or the most sensationalistic storylines, pointing out that all media representation for the most part is largely inaccurate, even for relationships and groups that are commonly depicted, and that representation does not necessarily equal good representation. Unless, of course, Riverdale is the universal high school experience. Again, it can be brought back to the question, where does entertainment fall? Is it representative? Escapist? Some fusion? Does it vary from program to program? How you view all of these things will also affect how you react. For all those who were excited by the idea of an asexual Jughead, there are also those who felt that Jughead's reluctance was a front and were excited to see a more sexual Jughead. Which interpretation you gravitate towards will depend largely upon experience, personal preference, and of course how much one is attached to canon, because both of these canons now exist. It is always fascinating to explore and examine which changes are accepted and which are deemed inappropriate. Throughout all of this, the actors and staff have been very articulate and level-headed about all of this, more so than happens in a lot of situations. And lest we forget, there are people who don't ship this simply because they feel no chemistry, or that stressful experiences are never the best time to start a relationship, or are supporting some other OTP, say Jarchi or Archie and Betty. Side note, Jarchi is not receiving the same amount of backlash, perhaps because it's a fan pairing, or perhaps because it is a pairing of another underrepresented group, so it is more difficult for people to discuss. It's always easy to vent when the opposition is the hegemonically dominant one. However, these discussions need to be had at all levels, and respect must always be employed. Does the fact that there is a lot more heterosexual representation automatically make the Betty Jughead pairing bad? Absolutely not. Does being disappointed by the lack of potential exploration of asexuality make one a bad or disloyal fan? Again, absolutely not. Both are understandable positions. You don't have to ship Bughead, but you should take the time to try and see why others might, and not just assume it's a decision born of ignorance. Just as if you're a Bughead shipper, know that these feelings of disappointment do not come from nowhere, but rather from a long history of being kept in the dark, and sometimes when it appears so close, people can get upset when their expectations are not met. Exploring chemistry is part of the fun of fandom, and should be open to all regardless of how common or uncommon others feel the pairing may be. Erasure is an issue, but just be careful one doesn't end up doing the very same thing they accuse others of. Just take a look at the Nightwing ethnicity casting debate occurring currently. Some are expressing the desire to see Nightwing be played by an Asian actor, and many are assuming that those who oppose this are racist. However, if one delves a little deeper into Nightwing's history, Nightwing actually also has a canon history as being of Romani descent. Hence, changing his ethnicity would erase another marginalized group's story. Whew. Yeah, sometimes these things get deep. Way deeper than a teen murder mystery show based around a 1940s comic should. Betty and Jughead have a lot of potential, and for longtime shippers, this is a dream come true. Betty finally ending up with someone who will appreciate her, and Jughead ending up with someone who will just let him be himself. It could be a relationship full of easy growth and trust. They're cute together and are two of the more compelling characters in the Riverdale reboot. Their comic forms will live on, and one will wait and see what awaits both these characters. For those who just want to escape to a cookout on the beach with these two, they provide a nice contrast of what a high school couple could be. Are you guys Bughead shippers, or is there some other Riverdale ship that catches your fancy? Share your ships and thoughts down below. I was going to start with Veronica, but then people just got a little nuts about Bughead. But yes, more Archie coming soon. This show, just when I thought I was out, they pull me back in. So this has been Shipper's Guide to the Galaxy. Thanks so much for watching. Don't forget to like, share, comment, and subscribe. Turn on that bell notification so you never miss a video, and as always, stay tuned, for there are as many ships out there as there are stars in the sky.